Good morning, pedal nerds on YouTube and nerdellas and nerdizzles. Someone from Carl Martin called me up and said, "Hey, can I send you some pedals that don't make sounds?" And I'm like, I'm intrigued. He says, "Well, you're the switcheroony doohickey guy, and you can probably explain these best." As if I know anything. So he sent me 5 pedals that are very interesting. They're gadgets, they're little helpers that we need. They might not be too sexy because they don't make the plexi sound or the super analog delay, but they might be just what you're looking for a certain solution that you might have on your board, on your amp, or whatever. And I haven't really done too much with them. We're gonna unbox them and check them out. And while I do that, I'll tell you where in this video you jump so that you can see what it does. So first one I grabbed is the Buff Deluxe. Well, it's a buffer. It is typical Carl Martin size, which is probably the one thing I would criticize about that. For a buffer, it's relatively big. It's a input and output buffer. An input and output buffer. Meaning, you can actually mute it, which is cool. Then it's going to the tuner out, so the tuner is not even in a chain. Why do you need a buffer? Always a question, what's a buffer for? I'm going to try to illustrate that in a quick demo. A buffer does something to the impedance or other. Some people try to explain that to me. I read things, I don't understand it. It's the better maker pedal. If you have a long chain, either long cables or a lot of pedals in a daisy chain, I always recommend getting something like a looper switcher. Of course, Carl Martin has the Octaswitch Mark III, which can take care of this. But if you have a long chain of cables or pedals, you go in and out and then into your board, into your pedals. And at the end of your pedal board, you go again in and out. So it's an input buffer before your pedals and an output buffer behind your pedals. Tuner out, you can mute it to silently tune, and this will simply take care of something in the cable magic that preserves your tone. Absolutely a tool if you have a lot of pedals and no switcher that you want. So I'm going to try to do a little test with this. We have, of course, looked at other looper switchers. So there you go. Takes 9 volt, has a little rubbery thing on the back, and the typical Carl Martin quality. As for price, I don't know, I might just put that down here. I haven't actually checked that out. The Parall-loop, this is something very useful. If you have a pedal that doesn't let your guitar signal through all the way, meaning, I know that the Strymons actually treat your guitar signal not at all, it just goes through. And then anything that the Strymon does gets mixed in. There are some pedals that might color your sound that don't necessarily have a super parallel mix bus. Now what this does is actually way cool. If you have a serial effects loop on your amp, what you do is you can make it into a parallel effects loop. So you go FX out or send on your amp into the input, output, back into the FX return, which means the guitar signal actually runs through this as cleanly as possible. And you have the super dry signal for your Marshall-y, JCM. I mean, anything where you're like, I want the driest dry shit out there. But you only have an FX loop that is serial, not parallel. This can parallelize it. It's a parallelizer. That's what I would have called it. Not the Parall-loop, the parallelizer. And then you have a loop, send, return, and then you mix it in. We're going to try this with the Carl Martin Headroom Reverb. It's a beautiful spring. And I'm going to put this on the good old Deluxe 40, Houston Kettner, in the effects loop, and actually just mix it in as I please while preserving my dry signal completely. It has a remote switch, which is cool. That means with something like the Carl Martin Octaswitch Mark III or Mark II that has trigger outs, you can actually program each of the presets to turn this loop on and off. So you don't actually have to turn the pedal on and off. Just turn the complete parallel loop on and off. Guitar goes through. It's pretty much just like, bypass, which is actually here. That's a soft switch. Soft switch. Let me show you up there. Oh, here we go. This is weird. Okay, here we go. So this is what the whole thing looks like. Again, you just run the guitar through, it is completely untouched, and then you have a normal parallel effects loop that you can turn on and off remotely through a trigger. Way cool. Same high quality. I love the big chicken head knob. This is also something that very likely you won't have on your board, but behind your amp or on your amp or something like this. Then we have the Rock Bug, which I'm very interested about. Which I am definitely very interested in with. So the Rock Bug is a speaker simulator. Technically, well, they're saying you could actually just plug in your pedals directly, which I highly doubt that, because that means you have no preamp, no nothing. You're just running with a pedal in it, and it gives you a speaker emulated output. Wait, woo! Closed and open back. Guitar, master. Input, output, and then it says phones, so a headphone preamp. We have a balanced DI out, and which is very nice, we actually have 2 RCA jacks on it, which means you can actually take this to your stereo. I would probably still want to take the FX out from my amp, so I have a preamp into here. We're going to try both. We're going to try plugging in a pedal directly, just a distortion, maybe a delay, and see what it sounds like on headphones with the balanced out. And well, RCA, we're just going to assume it's just the same as the balanced out. But we're also going to run a preamp into it. The Rock Bug. It's a little helpful for, to practice without an amp. It might be good enough. We're going to see. It might be good enough to actually run to a front of house just with your pedals or maybe a preamp. Very neat. We're going to check that out. Next, we have the Route Box, which is actually just it's a boring tool, but it's one that you might want, because you're one of those crazy motherfuckers that has too many things on stage. So the Route Box can accept 2 guitars into an amp or a pedal board, and then going to 2 different amps. So what that is, it's pretty much just 2 ABY boxes in one case, which is very neat. It might just be what you want. 2 guitars plugged in, going out to, let's say, your pedal board, which you very likely only have one of. And then the question's always like, well, which amp does it go to? Do you replug it? Do you have an ABY box on the pedal board? And then actually the pedal board will go in, and you can switch between your 2 different amps. So you can just go click and have another guitar without plugging it in again, and click, and switch your amps. Very simple. Would have been extremely nice, I gotta say this, to have remote switches. So this could be switched, at least the amp 1 and 2, with a looper switcher. But hey, can't have everything. So the Route Box, do we actually need to show this? It's not going to sound like anything. It is just a nice helper. Guitar 1, guitar 2, clink. Amp 1, amp 2, clink. Pedal board in between makes total sense to me. I'm thinking doing a demo for this. I'm sorry, it's kind of stupid. It's not going to sound like anything. It's just going to switch. And since there's no remote switches, this is pretty much what it's going to look like, and you hear a different amp. So that demo is done. Sorry. It's simple. If you are in need of this kind of tool, smack it on your board. Way cool. And this is a very, very special tool. Very special tool. But you might be in need of this. It is the Matchbox. No, we're not playing with matches. God, my puns are really lame. It's the Matchbox, which means you have 2 guitars, and they're different in output, and you really don't like it when all of a sudden, instead of your Les Paul with high-powered pickups, maybe even active EMGs, you go to your Strat, or S-type guitar, or T-type guitar, and all of a sudden the output is a lot lower. your drive doesn't behave the same. Everything is kind of your compressor doesn't. All your settings all of a sudden don't quite work for the S-type or lower output guitar because you had it set up for the guitar with higher outputs. So what you can do is plug in 2 instruments. Again, it's like an AB box. Switch between the 2 instruments, but you can actually match the levels of those 2 instruments. And we're gonna simply smack that in front of the Houston Kettner and see if it does what it's supposed to do. Okay, so that's the overview. And here we go, starting with the Matchbox. That should be the easiest. See you in a sec. So here we go. I'm gonna get this S-type guitar with a pick that I don't know where it is. Oh, what is this? That's really small. That's what she said. So here's my level. Those are not tuned, who cares? I know this has vintagey kind of pickup, so it's got very low output. I'm going into the Houston Kettner Deluxe 40, right behind the Matchbox, on the clean channel, and that's going into a Torpedo live from 2 notes. So I was going to pull the cable. I don't have to do that. I just switched to my second guitar, which is a PRS SC250 serious output pickups. That sounds beautiful, huh? What am I... So that's the clean? Or difficult? It's not really the clean, huh? It's already fizzling, and that is the problem of this guitar. It pushes. And voila, there is the clean. So very clearly, very useful tool if you're working with guitars that have highly differing output levels. So a special tool, but one that can fill the need, fill a void in your arsenal of gadgets. Come out and pretty damn cool. Okay, next crazy product, the Buff Deluxe. Well, buffer is always difficult to test, and in my Bonafide buffer from TC video, I first actually used a looper to really have exactly the same guitar signal to compare. The problem was that the Ditto looper, of course, is buffered. So if you have a buffer in front of your buffer chain, then it's kind of stupid to use a buffer to show what the buffer does if you already have a buffer. So no buffer here. We're going into the H&K Deluxe 40 clean channel through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Moval pedals, which I simply picked because they are of decent quality, they're small enough to all fit on the table, and I know they all have true bypass, at least they should, which means they don't have power connected right now. They don't have to. I'm just using them as a mini patch cable, together with these patch cables from Planet Waves that I actually made for the Iron Man Joyo board. So the cables are of rather high quality. My Sommer cable going from the guitar into the chain is of high quality, so we're not dealing with crap here. If you have crappy cables, you definitely need a buffer, but start with good stuff all around, if you can. So, technically, I made sure all of them are off. I plugged every single one in. There's our signal. So let's see if we can actually hear a difference. I'm just gonna do 2 chords, and I'm gonna actually copy that later while my face is just sitting there like, and do an A-B comparison. How about that? Now we are going with the guitar into the Buff Deluxe. Out of the Buff Deluxe into my first pedal. So this is the first in the chain, then all your pedals come. Then out of this thing, the last pedal into the second input of the Buff Deluxe, and out of the Buff Deluxe into the Deluxe 40. It is on. So right now it's muted. And you could actually tune, so the buffer is always on. You can't turn the buffer off, which you don't want to. So I'll try to play the same thing. Now, we'll do A-B. First, no buffer, then buffer. Here we go. Wow. Watermelon donut. Awesome. Okay. The Buff Deluxe by Carl Martin. It's a tool. It doesn't do anything other than make everything better. And that should be enough. Next one on the list is the Parall-loop. So the next one on the list is the Parall-loop, which is kind of nice. It is simply just adds a parallel option to your, to your signal chain. Now, I'm using it here in the traditional sense. You have a serial effects loop and you want to make it parallel. Simply being able to keep your guitar signal completely dry and just mix in your effect signal. But you could go crazy. You could do anything parallel. What if you had two delays? You have a digital delay and an analog delay and you don't want them going into each other. You actually want to have them mixed in. So your digital, can I do that? No, I don't think I can, because for that, let me see, I have my digital delay. No, I would actually need two parallel loops. Because the digital delay would be before or after. So no, you couldn't do that. But I'm just thinking here. But you could have a drive. You could mix in. Yeah, you could do that. You could actually mix in a drive to another drive instead of having them push each other. Could you? No, they're still not completely parallel. One will still be affected by the other because it'll be before or after. Am I seeing this correctly here? You would need two parallel loops. So no, actually in this sense, it is to be used to parallelize a serial effect loop. Woo! Okay. What I have here is the headroom, which is a true spring reverb. Can't hear that. I don't want to break it. True spring reverb with an A/B setting, so you can actually see with a remote switch. I'm using external switching on this Octaswitch Mark III here from Carl Martin. External switching to actually switch between the A and B setting, which is right now just a different tone. And the Parall-loop has a remote switch input. Now, interestingly, when I used the external switch on the Octaswitch Mark III, it wasn't happening. It switched every time I went to 1. It switched on. I went to 2, nothing happened. I went back to 1 and then it switched off. So there's a momentary latch kind of switchy problem. But then I simply took the output of 3, so I'm sacrificing one of my loops to use as a switch. Yes, you can do that. So I'm using output number 3 of loop 3 just as a switch. So if on number 1 I have 3 enabled, it will turn the Parall-loop on. Now in this case off. What the? It did that the other way. Wait. Now I want that to be on. What the crapola? It just did that earlier. Why can I not now do it? It was working. I want it to be on these two. Okay, so I turn that around then. It was working beautifully. Off, on, on. For some reason, it changed the switching state. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. So I can remotely control it. The input and the output are now wired into my effects channel, which is serial, on the Houston Kettner Deluxe 40, again going into Two Notes Torpedo Studio. And the send and return is wiring in the headroom. So right now it is off. Of course, I could use the foot switch if I'm not using the remote input. So if I go to 1, It's turning on the Parall-loop and switching to the green setting, the A side on my reverb. And now I can just dial in. I have the reverb all the way up, full level. And now I use the Parall-loop to dial in how much I want. And the red side. Much darker right now. And our precious dry signal is still being preserved because it's just going through and the parallel loop is mixing. So, there you go. Of course, nice with something that can switch, and with a workaround by sacrificing one of the loops, you can even switch this. So there you go, the Carl Parallel Loop, the parallelizer, very nice tool again to have behind your amp to add something to your amp that it didn't have. One more. Right now we have the Rock Bug, which is a speaker frequency compensated kind of a pedal thing for practice, going straight into a PA, or even way cool if you have a stereo system, which actually I don't know who else makes this, with RCA outputs. So that's way cool. You know, if you just want to play through your stereo system, that's cool. The way I have it with the balanced DI out now going into my system, the master doesn't do anything, but that's okay. So I have the guitar, you have an open and a closed back speaker. I don't know if this is a 112, 412 or whatever it's simulating, I don't really care. This is the clean sound I'm getting playing straight into it and into the system. That's already decent. Remember, there's no preamp, there's no amp, anything. This is guitar straight into, you know, the computer. So I'm gonna engage the DC drive from Carl here and see what happens. It's got the typical fizzly high end that you associate with speaker simulations, but absolutely really not bad. Let's check with the closed back. Sounds, you know, more closed. Duh. You can plug in your headphones directly, which is way cool for practice. You know, get your favorite pedals, plug in directly. This might even be good enough for the occasional gig. You know, if you don't want to drag everything, just put that on your pedal board. It might be fine. I I'm gonna compare this now with a pedal that is meant to be used more as a preamp. We'll see what happens. So, this beast is the Guru's Double Decker. It itself, is that something you say? Yes. It itself has a compensated out, which sounds okay. But it's a dual channel kind of a pushed plexi kind of a thing. But it's meant as a preamp. So let's see what that sounds like. Ooh. Not too shabby, which leaves us with one more thing that we want to push through it. Off. Bye-bye. And that is the let's see if we can do this. The preamp of the Houston Kettner Deluxe 40. So we're actually using a real amp. Well, that's pushing it quite hard. I gotta turn my torpedo down, which I was hearing. It doesn't want that level. It can't handle it. Because that's clean. So there's a little bit of a level problem. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to be a little helper gadget. It's designed to be the thing that you put behind the pedal and bam, you can listen to it. Cool. It's designed to be, let's call it realistic, a demo recording, speaker simulation, a thing they put on your pedal board for your quick gig, for your rehearsal. Nice. So now I'm going to check some prices and I'll let you know what I think. So after hours of talking about gadgets from Carl Martin, we are done. We have not actually, tested the route box. It's a cool product, a cool tool that'll do what it promises. I mean, come on, how am I going to describe this? It's a 2-in-1 ABY for people that need this kind of tool. It's $129 as far as I could tell. I've only found actually on the 2 big stores in Germany that I looked at, 2 of these boxes for 129. So I'm assuming that's kind of the price range that we're talking about. A great tool in super high quality from Carmarthen. The Matchbox does what it's supposed to do, and I think it solves a problem that some of us don't quite know we have, but I always fight with levels, either too hot or too low, and especially in a live situation, this can save your ass. Whether that's worth the money, you have to decide, but this is Carmarthen, Danish quality by Total Pedal Nerds. The Parall-loop, again, great solution for a simple problem. I know there are other products out there. I know that Exotic has one, probably more than $130. So this probably is about 130, I would assume. And I know that there's a solution from Lele, which is definitely way more money. The buff, it's a great buffer. It cleans up your signal. Whether you want to spend that much on a buffer, it's a dual buffer. You know, some other buffers you put in front, behind. The tuner out's a nice little gimmick. The mute function is a nice little gimmick. So it will do the job. It will clean up your signal, retain the signal quality in Carmarthen dependability. That's all I can say to that. They're tools. I mean, it's not like, wow, did I have fun playing this? You know, they do what they're supposed to do, and they do it incredibly well in Danish quality. The Rock Bug, $129 for something that gives you a practice sound, a demo sound. It's never gonna sound like a real mic'd cab. It sounds pretty damn good though. I know that one of the fan favorites is the Palmer DI box. I've never actually played it. I only hear good things about the Palmer. Here you have open and closed. I know that the Palmer, it's very simple. It's just a DI box with an out and a through, as far as I know. I really like the RCA option to actually just hook it up to your stereo, and you can plug in headphones directly. So I think with this, it has a few more options than the Palmer. Might be slightly higher in price, but again, Carmarthen quality. Not saying that Palmer is shit. I haven't actually tested it. The sound is absolutely, let's call it acceptable for a speaker simulated, compensated tool. That's what these are. They're tools, and they're great tools. And I'm happy that Carmarthen had me check them out. It's nerdy stuff, you know. It's not like, whoa, I really want to try out the Buff Deluxe. It's like, it's something you need. And Carmarthen offers all these options for your pedal nerdy goodness. I'm out. Thanks for watching, if you've made it this far, which I can't imagine anyone did. Okay, see you people later. Thanks, Søren, for sending these over. Yeah, you knew no one else would deal with these tools. I do, because that's how I roll. Bye, guys.